Right, even though I will be doing most of the talking, as Lucy said, it'd be great if we had the sense that this was more of a conversation and an exchange. And so I would love people to turn on your cameras if you feel okay doing so. I find it makes a big difference in terms of the connection that we feel, and we'll be talking about that a bit today as well. I know we have 3 talks back to back now. I hopefully have allowed several minutes at the end for questions, but also feel free to interrupt as we go on. Okay, slides good? All right, so I'm going to be talking about moving beyond happiness and the role that positive psychology can have for social change. And this is an idea that has been gaining increasing interest in recent years, actually even more than just recent years. Some of these books are now a decade old, and a few of them are Creating the World We Want to Live In is a book that has just come out this year. But they're testament to this really growing interest in moving beyond the focus on the individual and kind of to more societal level of well-being. And I think Tim Wellness is going to be talking this afternoon about, are we actually seeing what could be called a third wave in positive psychology with a greater focus on societal well-being. And in talking with colleagues and students, one of the classes that I teach at the MAP is Positive Society. What I hear from colleagues and students is, yes, great, definitely. We should focus on bigger impact. But how do we do so when we're working with individuals? So it's kind of like the nature of our work in psychology as coaches, psychologists, social workers, educators, is that we work on the individual level. So the question is, how do we generate societal change when we're working with individuals? We're not policymakers. This is, in a way, this is a tough question because this is the nature of the field itself. We work with studying with individuals, studying the mind and behavior. And so how can we generate real change if we're working on the individual level? And I think that if we're creative, the answer to that question can be found in the problem itself, right? So it's perhaps, as students and scholars of human behavior, maybe it's in understanding how people work that we could find a way to figure out how individuals can be agents for change. Okay, so we have all this knowledge in experimental psychology and related disciplines about how people work, what drives our behavior, etc. And so maybe it's in harnessing that knowledge that we can generate ideas for societal change. And I'm going to be talking about one example of that today. This research in the past few decades has shown us lots of stuff. I'm going to talk about 2 behavioral tendencies that people have and the potential that I think that can have for generating change. The first is that we have a need for connection. People strive to feel a sense of connection with others. And we also have a need for agency, for action. We want to be able to act on the world. Actually, I was really happy this morning when I saw one of the chat items from yesterday. One of the take-home messages was about agency. Now, these two together, as I'll say in a few minutes, have a lot of potential, I think. But just focusing first on our need for connection. Okay, we see young children reaching out to their caregivers. We know humans are an inherently super social species. In all the theories of well-being that I know of, relationships are one of the key elements. We know that there are physiological effects to decreased social interaction and loneliness. And by connection, by the way, it's not just our close relationships. It's feeling a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself, community. So it can be your neighbors, shopkeepers, fellow parents on school drop-off, okay? So we have a need for connection. Rise of social media also is testament to this, okay? And then we also have a need for agency, okay, to act on the world, to feel a sense that we are causing an effect. And so that can be throwing apples off of a bench. It can be throwing food off of a high chair. Why do babies do that? That's super satisfying. Oh, I'm having an effect. Or making blocks tumble to the ground. Video games, this is another example of the satisfaction that comes from acting on the world. And we see this also when we are deprived of it, okay? Because boredom, that's what boredom is. Boredom is not being able to engage in the way that we want to engage in the world. And so what do we do when we're bored? Well, we'll doodle, or we'll of course pick up our phones and kind of, but it's a really aversive feeling to not be able to do. And there's actually one study that I love because I can't quite believe it, but people will choose to administer mild electric shocks to themselves rather than be bored, rather than just sit in a waiting room with their thoughts for 15 minutes. Given the choice, they'll just shock themselves a little bit. So there's this kind of, at least then I'm in pain, but I'm acting, right? So we have a need for connection and need for action. And where I think things can get interesting is that when we put these two together, we want to act on the world and we want to connect with others. This can help explain our desire to make a difference. We want to make a difference. Now, if I ask you here, what brings you joy or meaning in your work? I think many of you would say it's making a difference to others. It's helping others. Now that could be because we're at a conference for positive psychology practitioners, but I think that it would still be the case if we were at an engineering conference or even a marketing conference, right? People, we all want to make a difference. And actually a recent survey, this was done in France, asked people, random sample of people, would you like to do something to make the world a better place? And 94% of people surveyed said yes. Okay, so that's good news, yeah? This means everyone here, I'm assuming, it means all the people, the individuals that you work with, we all want to make a difference. And it also means just kind of most people in the world. If we were in Paris right now, in a big city, most of us want to make a difference. That doesn't mean we all want to make a massive difference, but at the end of the day, another question that came up yesterday and that was repeated in the chat this morning was, what makes life meaningful, or what makes a goal meaningful? And I would suspect that a lot of what gives our life meaning is how we're able to make a difference to others, okay? So, all good, but not quite. Because there was another question asked in this survey, which was, how many of you have acted on that desire to make the world a better place? And the answer to that was 7%. Okay, so of those surveyed, only 7% had acted on the desire. So that's a pretty big gap. It might be different in different surveys, but the fact is that there's a disconnect between kind of how much we want to make a difference and what we're actually doing. Often when I present this, people kind of roll their eyes in terms of like, well, what hypocrisy? I don't think it's hypocrisy. I don't think these people are trying to look good. I think this is more a sign of something that we know very well from decades of research. Again, is there's this huge gap between our intentions and our behavior, okay? This can be found in a range of areas. For instance, we might all want to exercise regularly and procrastinate less and eat better and meditate every day, right? 94% of us might have that as our intention. And maybe not 7%, but significantly fewer actually act on those intentions, okay? And so I think that the way to bridge this gap between intention and behavior is actually perhaps surprisingly simple. There's this quote by Richard Thaler, who's seen to be kind of one of the fathers of behavioral economics and recently won the Nobel Prize. And he says, if you want people to do something, make it easy, okay? And he actually summarized the whole field of behavioral economics, which is basically just psychology, but with a better budget, with saying, this is it. If you want people to do something, make it easy, okay? And I think we forget that a lot. So, you know, it's super easy to scroll through social media, right? It's not a coincidence that so much of our life is spent doing things that are easy. So the question is, how can we make it easier to make a difference? I have to let my cat out. Can we make it easier? Is it easy enough, right? Because in some sense, okay, well, we can volunteer, we can give money, we can give blood. Many of us can have a career in which we can make a difference. We can just be a good citizen. So, and those are all super legitimate ways to make a difference. Can we make it easier? Because we know from tons of research in positive psychology that helping others feels good. And this is the thing, we have this win-win, right? Helping others is beneficial for individual well-being, and it's beneficial for society. So we should really be doing everything we can to make this easier. And so a few years ago with Mathieu Fouché, who's there with his earphones there, I created a nonprofit with this in mind. And it was, we thought, how about if we create a new way of helping, which are small scale, super personalized projects that are easy and fun to do, and a program to help each person find their own and give it a name. So we call these MACs. So this is what Lucy was talking about earlier. And we came up with we describe it using a very simple formula, which is we take a person and their interests and their strengths and their personal experiences and their unique background, what they bring to the table, so to speak. And then we ask them about what are their unique concerns based on their experiences and background in terms of problems to be solved in the world, problems, small problems. And we put these together and we see if we can create a project. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's say somebody likes walking her dog, and she finds that there's too much litter in parks and natural spaces. So we put these together, and her project, her MAC, could be organizing dog walking cleanups in her local woods. Or if we have someone who likes working out and thinks that kids spend too much time on their screens, that person's project could be to give free circuit training after school for teens. Okay, and there are I want to say an infinite number of projects possible. You know, I mean, there are as many projects as there are people, more, because any one person can have several projects. Okay. And so what we do is we train professionals to do the method with the people that they work with, psychologists, coaches, social workers, et cetera. So we've got a training manual and worksheets, again, trying to make the whole process super easy. And what's interesting is that in making it easier, it makes it more accessible. And so we're able to open up the possibility of making a difference to people who don't necessarily see themselves as change makers or don't have that as part of their identity in a dominant way. And so this includes, we've worked with people on long-term unemployment, people with psychiatric issues, addiction issues, getting out of prison, in nursing homes, and the feedback inevitably, well, maybe not inevitably, but really consistently gives me goosebumps. It's super empowering. People are saying, I can make a difference, and this feels really good. And this is just a recent example from May, where this is Cindy, who did the MAC program with her social worker that she was working with, and her MAC project was to knit hats and scarves for homeless people. And so this was a poster that she put together with her social worker to organize a yarn collection. And I think they came up with, you know, they were inundated with yarn. I'm not sure how many hundreds of skeins of yarn they received, but I see this poster, I see Cindy feeling really proud, and I see Cindy making a difference for someone else. So again, we've got this win-win. This is not meant to be a pitch for MAC, but I mean, I'm giving the website if you're interested. It's more meant as an example of how we can generate societal change at the individual level because of these two needs that we have. And if we manage to do so, if we manage to kind of increase the amount of people who are engaging and actually acting on their intentions, they are feeling better, and the world is a better place. So maybe, you know, okay, could we raise that to 37%? Imagine what that would be like. 37% of people who have these mini actions, or, you know, even 67%, okay? So when you extrapolate these micro projects on a massive scale, this is when you can really start to envision societal change. You know, we know that change can come from the top down, or it can come from the bottom up. And if we're policymakers or other leaders, we can initiate top-down change. For many of us, though, working in the field of psychology, it's going to be working with a bottom-up approach. But I think in kind of understanding how individuals work, what makes us tick, we can find a way for individuals to become agents for change and then generate more societal change. And that's it. So I did respect the timing, and so we'll have tons of time for questions. I'll stop sharing.